So glad you made it back, and everybody weathered the storm last night wherever you were, hopefully. But we're going to go ahead and get started. We are live streaming these sessions out of this room, so they're going out now. And we would like you to remember that there is vendors next door and out in the lobby. Obviously, you've already found the food out front as well. So please, as the sessions continue today, visit the vendors and get more food and hear the presenters. The one that we're going to listen to this morning, I'd like to introduce Melinda Stanley. She's the Assistant Director for Membership Development at CanRen, and she will be talking to us about cybersecurity education and certification opportunities. So without further ado, she has some more guests she'll introduce as well.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. It's exciting for me to be here. I'm a Washburn grad, so I think this is the first time I've been back to my alma mater to present in a different light, so it's always nice to come home. So I'd like to welcome all of you. We're excited about this topic, and as Brenda mentioned, I'd like to welcome those folks that may be viewing live on the live stream, as well as those that may watch the archive later. She mentioned with the Kansas Research and Education Network, CanRen for short. A number of you, I hope, are our members. Some of you board members are here. We appreciate the opportunity to work, to work with all of you, and are excited to be here. This is a topic that, as the State Research and Education Network, we're a consortium of members. And our members are many of you. Higher ed is a big majority of our members, K-12, community anchor institutions, city, county government, hospitals, libraries. And as a result of that, those relationships between and among our members are very important to us. We are basically here to serve and support IT teams across the state, and we work specifically with your teams. So we have a stake in this cybersecurity topic for a number of reasons and from a number of perspectives. If you're not familiar with CanRen, we've been around for almost 25 years, and we do work with you guys on connectivity, technology services, and support. And we are a membership organization, so we're not about selling you things. We're about responding to the needs that you have and helping you sharpen skills, helping make sure that you have the services and support that you need to do what your mission is, and that's education. So as a stakeholder in that process, we have a number of initiatives, and the guests that I'm going to introduce in just a minute are part of a partnership that we've recently formed. As a research and education network, we work with a lot of other research and education networks around the country, and Merit is long-standing research and education network in Michigan, and we have partnered with them. And on our website, under CanRen Initiatives, you'll find more information about that. We're just going to talk today about the cybersecurity education and certification opportunities with Merit, but there are other things that we are partnering with them on primarily for professional learning and support. I don't know about you, this has been a great conference to come in and hear what other people are doing. And as an IT professional, I tend to get the most value and benefit from my peers. And having these opportunities to discuss and hear what other people are doing or just help propel us so much faster down that research road and that road to knowing what things we should and shouldn't be doing than we could if we were on our own. So as a consortium, CanRen is interested in evolving this conversation, helping people connect to to each other, to the topics that are near and dear to our missions in terms of IT support and operations as we accomplish our education mission. And to do that, like I said, we've partnered with Merit Network. And I'm going to bring the Zoom session up and introduce our folks from Merit. Merit, as I said, is based in Michigan, and our presenter yesterday, Ben, mentioned several different institutions in Michigan that are doing research. Those institutions are Merit members. So it makes sense as a consortium for us to try to connect you and to try to connect you with the best resources that are available, the expertise that they've developed in Michigan around cybersecurity education is something that we as a team, our IT group, we are IT, right? That's what we do. So we are very interested in continuing to sharpen our skills, recognizing that you also need to do that for your IT teams. And we have a vested interest in you. And we have a vested interest in the workforce development that can happen in the programs that you offer at all of your universities and colleges. So we hope that by connecting with Merit that we'll extend those opportunities. And to help us do that and to share some of the work that Michigan is doing, we have Jason Brown, who is the Chief Information Security Officer for Merit, as well as Jamaica Williams, who works on the cyber range, to share what they are doing in Michigan and how the partnership there and the opportunities that they have can be something that you all can take advantage of. So Jamaica, I'm going to turn it over to you all.
Okay, good morning. Can you all hear us okay, Melinda?
Yes? Are we good? Okay, even in the back, we're good.
Okay, great. All right, well, we'll just jump right into the presentation. So Melinda's already sort of given a brief overview of Merit, but we'll just do a little bit of a deeper dive. As she mentioned, we are an organization that's been around for quite some time. We celebrated our 50th year anniversary this year, in fact. We're a member-owned organization, and by and large, our governing members, which are the 12 public universities within the state of Michigan, sort of our owners, if you will. We also have 285 plus affiliate members throughout the state. We are a nonprofit organization, and we are in fact the country's oldest and largest research and education network. Merit operates a fiber optic network throughout the state of Michigan, which spans almost 4,000 miles. We were the recipient of one of the first NSF grants many, many moons ago, which really helped to develop what we now know as the modern day internet. Merit really exists to provide services to our members. Members can consist of K-20, libraries, almost any sort of community-facing, non-for-profit organization. I've already kind of mentioned, we exist for services, and this slide just kind of highlights some of the services. We originally were created to interconnect the IBM mainframes of the big three, which we consider Wayne State University, Michigan State, and the University of Michigan. Over the last 50 years, though, our services have evolved to many that you see on the screen. By and large, internet is sort of our backbone, but we also provide, as Melinda mentioned, the cybersecurity certifications, among other professional development. We provide an RSA for collaboration among our membership. We provide infrastructure as a service, various internet services that kind of coincide with that, such as voice over IP, cloud media, VDC, and again, these are all just services that we found are of value to our members. And Melinda's already kind of given an introduction of myself and Jason, but I've been with the organization for 2 years now. My background is sales, but I learned how to spell IT when I started working for Merit. It's been a great evolution for me because I came along and was brought on as the sales manager for the cyber range. So it's been exciting because cyber range had only been around for a couple of years when I came. And the challenge was really us trying to figure out who we were going to be when we grew up. And I was able to sort of help write that story. So it's been an exciting couple of years for me here with the organization, especially as Merit really starts to focus on, and we've been doing this for, a couple of years now, but starts to focus on becoming a huge resource to our members and our community in the security space. So I'll let Jason kind of do a brief intro.
Sure. Like Melinda said, my name is Jason Brown, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here with Merit. I'm relatively new. I've been here since October, but I was given two main objectives when I got hired on with Merit Network. One of them was to, increase our security posture within the company ourselves, and then start working on a security portfolio that we can start using to help our membership. So I'm excited to be part of the team and work on those initiatives for the company.
So just a little bit of background about the cyber range and sort of how this all came to be, and really the story behind why we are passionate about what we do in terms of cybersecurity. A couple of years ago, well, a few years ago now, the governor of the state of Michigan had a huge initiative to really put the state at the forefront in terms of cyber awareness, preparedness, and training. Obviously, there is a massive amount of critical infrastructure within the state of Michigan, especially when you consider our international borders, our ports. So it was important to Governor Snyder to really shore up the talent in terms of cybersecurity within the state. He created a public-private partnership, if you will, between several entities, and it just made sense for Merit to be a part of that, given the background, the history that we had within the space, given our collaboration, our community involvement, our membership being K-20 by and large. So Merit was brought into that, as well as some of the major power entities, some of the institutions of higher education. But it was huge for the state because our governor, had a vision to really do something unlike many other governors within the country. Excuse me. So the reason was really to help defend our commerce and residents from cybersecurity attacks. It's important to mitigate known growing cyber threats. And then this also allowed us to really promote economic development. Michigan has a lot of unique advantages, and you can see them there on the screen. We have a ton of educational institutions, a huge IT workforce, the manufacturing and industrial base that we have with the big three car companies, and then federal cooperation and planning was a major goal of his as well. So Merit's been very fortunate to be a part of this initiative. Our governor really gets it, and I think we're starting to really expand beyond the state with partnerships like CanRen and other RENs throughout the country. So we'll get into the agenda, and then I'm going to pass it over to Jason. But today's focus is really the what, the why, and the how. We want to talk about what the threats are, why we're even, why should this matter? Why is this important to me? And then the how. How are our adversaries coming against us? And then we won't leave you there. We won't leave you with the gloom and doom. We'll then transition into, well, what can we do about it? So.
Okay, so I just wanted to, spend a few minutes on speaking about the threats that we've been seeing over the last few months. And first and foremost, ransomware is relatively new. It's been around for about 3 years now, and it's been hitting a lot of hospitals, government entities, libraries, and those types of organizations. So, a couple of months ago, the Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center in Los Angeles ended up getting hit by a ransomware, and they ended up having to spend about $17,000 to gain access back to all of their information. And then during that time, the patients were diverted to other hospitals within the LA area because they weren't able to use their computer system. The Methodist Hospital in Henderson, Kentucky was also hit with a ransomware, and they ended up having to spend about $1,600. And what they ended up having to do was move into what they considered an internal state of emergency, where they shut down all of the internal computers, servers, and websites inside in order to contain the outbreak. The police departments within the area, the Swansea, Massachusetts, got hit with a $700 ransomware, and then Midlothian, Illinois, got hit with a $500 ransomware. And that one was particularly interesting because they ended up having to encrypt all of their local hard drives and their backup files, which forced the police department into actually paying the ransom in order to get their files back. And then recently, there's a local municipality power company in Lansing, Michigan, called the Board of Water and Light. They were hit by a spoofing or a phishing email that came in. What the user ended up doing was clicking on an infected file, which started infecting her computer and then spread quite quickly throughout their organization. And that they ended up having to take down their finance system and their email system, which affected about 250 employees. It never touched any of their customer data, but they ended up having to take those systems down for an undetermined amount of time in order to bring those systems back up. So like I said, it started back in about 2013 with the first one being the crypto wall, and then there's a lot of variants after that, so Tesla Crypt, Torrent Crypt, to what is most popular now called Locky. Locky comes in through email, and it's an infectious macro that gets embedded into Microsoft documents, so your Excel documents, Microsoft Word documents, and those types of things. And what happens is as soon as you open up the file, it runs some kind of script in the back end that goes out to some command and control servers and downloads the payload and starts encrypting your hard drive. And what it does is, like I said, it starts going after your desktops, your laptops, your internal disk drives. It then spans off from there and starts going towards your file shares and everything else. What happens is it encrypts your files first and then deletes those files after the fact so you can't get access to them. Now, the FBI has been stating quite frequently not to pay the ransom because that only gives fuel to those malicious users out there. And just a couple of weeks ago, the Kansas Heart Hospital in Wichita just announced that they were hit by ransomware back in 2015. And what they did was they ended up paying an undisclosed amount of money for the key to decrypt all of their files. But once they paid that ransom, the malicious users came back and said, well, that wasn't enough money. You're going to end up having to pay us more in order for you to get your key to decrypt those files. So Locky kind of looks like this. It shows up with a file with a bunch of random characters on the screen and says, please enable macros in order to take a look at the file. So once it does that, or once the user encrypts it, or clicks on enable, it shows the characters, but then it launches the payload to start downloading all of the encryption software. Now, DDoS has also been... So DDoS has also been coming up over the last few months. If you haven't heard, we've had some city in the news, the Flint water crisis, and there's been a lot of companies, state government, state of Michigan, and then including ourselves, we were all hit by a DDoS attack. Now, some of that had been through anonymous. Some of that could be coincidence as well. We're not sure here at Merit whether or not we were part of that anonymous campaign. But over the span of about 2 or 3 weeks in January in early February, we were hit by a number of different waves of DDoS, anywhere from 8 gigabits per second all the way up to 25 gigabits per second. So, I mean, that affected us, it affected our services, and it affected our members, and we had to take drastic measures in order to contain that attack and in order to restore services back to ourselves and our membership. Other universities that have been attacked over the last year or so, Rutgers was attacked about 6 times last year. In March of 2015, they had one attack that lasted an entire weekend, and then in December they had one attack that lasted 4 days in total. And that was after they spent $3 million to put in countermeasures to try and mitigate those attacks. Arizona State was experienced an attack against their central authentication system, which prevented the students, faculty, and staff members from being able to log in and access Arizona State resources. And then the University of Alaska was hit with a DDoS attack that created about 500,000 sessions per second, which overran their firewall and took their campus offline. Phishing has been coming up in the news quite a bit over the last few years, but 2 campaigns in particular. As of March 31st, 55 companies were released W-2 information to unknown third parties. So what ended up happening was they received an email from what they suspected to be their chief financial officer or their chief executive officer, stating that they need to have access to Excel documents or whatever they were using to store that W-2 information and email that out. And, just recently, the Milwaukee Bucks released to the news that they were also hit by that scam last year from an email that appeared to be from the president of the team. Last month, Pomeroy Investment Company, locally here in Michigan, in Troy, they ended up transferring out $495,000 to a company overseas, and that also came in, like a similar attack where a phishing email came in, impersonated their CFO, and they ended up transferring that money out for a wire transfer over to a company in China. We've been seeing a number of credit card skimming devices being installed in gas stations throughout the state here. We've encountered 40 of them so far between last year and this year, and they can be installed within a matter of seconds. And those devices come with some kind of wireless technology, whether it's Bluetooth or Zigbee or whatever. And those get placed inside the gas station, so that way they start skimming the credit card numbers, and they never have to open that machine back up to get the data back out. All of that data is then transferred to the person that installed it, and nobody is able to detect who's doing it. The problem with us is that we've got 14 inspectors. Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, they're the agency within the state of Michigan that's responsible for going out there and looking at these. They've got 14 inspectors for over 100,000 gas pumps throughout the state. So it takes us quite a bit of time to go out there and validate that a skimmer was installed. Now, just recently, Wendy's had a data breach as well, and they had a class action lawsuit brought against them because the people that got their credit cards stolen believed that it was Wendy's was at fault because they installed credit card machines that were a few years out of date. And what happened was when the credit card was run through the machine machine held on to that information in memory for a longer period of time than what's necessary, and that the software that was on there to grab the credit card data was actually skimming memory and pulling that credit card data out. Also, Wendy's did not go through the process of installing the new EMV card readers, or the chip and pin readers for the new credit cards. As of October 15th of last year, all companies had to begin moving over to the new credit card machines, or they were going to be held liable if they had a breach. So because of old technology and not being able to handle the new credit card chip and pin, they were found liable, and that's why that class action lawsuit was filed. So we're beginning to see a pattern between the present and what's forecasted for the future. So we take the paleontology versus meteorology approach, and the paleontology is in the present or not so far in the past. So we see what's going on, and we've seen what's happened in the past for other companies, and we try to forecast out to the future what's going to happen. But the problem is we don't have the necessary resources to try and figure out what's happening to mitigate those future attacks. At a conference a couple of weeks ago I was at, we had a speaker make the comment that if we were able to predict that a compromise was going to happen tomorrow, where would we be at today to try and prevent it? And that's really what the issue is we're not able to figure out how to mitigate those future attacks. And we really feel that cybersecurity and education is at the forefront to try and help with mitigating those compromises. So, we're spending $71 billion in 2014. In 2015, we spent $76.9 billion, and 43% said that their organizations plan to add new IT staff positions within the information security field. So obviously, the money that we're spending is not the problem. It becomes the resources. And this is a study that was done in 2014 by Asaka. They said 62% increase in breaches since 2013. 8 months is the average time to detect a system has been compromised. 83% of companies lack the personnel with the right skills to protect their assets. And in 2016, when they redid this study, they're seeing a windfall of 1.9 million workers in the cybersecurity workforce by 2019. $1 billion worth of PII records being stolen, and by 2020, an average cost per breach of $150 million. So, how do we help with this? Because we're not able to train the workforce properly. 43% of organizations lack the personnel with cloud and server virtualization skills. 31% lack network security skills, and 30% lack security analytics and forensic skills. So, over the last few centuries, or ever since the beginning of time, wars have been fought by brute force alone. However, in the future, we begin to see that, brute force isn't the only way a war will be won. It will be won by those who have the computer or other technical skills. And this is where we need to start focusing our attention on cybersecurity education.
And so, Jason really has brought to light the reason Merit and the Cyber Range are so passionate about what we do. Obviously, there's a massive shortfall in terms of talent. And that is why the Cyber Range was created, to really fill this gap. So we like to take, the crawl, walk, run approach as it relates to training. The Cyber Range itself is not a place, it's not a brick and mortar building, it's a program. And that program is focused on teaching, testing, and training. So in the crawl phase, we like to focus on just those basic technical skills and experience. We have to start somewhere. We have to begin to develop those skills, and we focus more on the sort of building those skills and building that knowledge base from that perspective. So we like to start with cybersecurity training, certification, and then experience. We don't think it's a good strategy to just, build the alphabet soup behind your name. We like to take that a step further, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides. But that basic crawl phase is those certifications. So we offer about 42 different cybersecurity certifications, and I'll get more into detail on those in a couple of slides. So after we focus on just kind of starting with those building blocks, we like to sort of start to take the training wheels off a bit. The run phase is more about experiential, hands-on training. It's practicing not only from an individual perspective, but working within a team environment. It focuses on collaboration. Let's be honest, if our organization were to be breached, we don't operate and wouldn't operate in silos. One team would depend upon another. That could be the IT team, depending on the business team. I guess what I'm saying is that as an organization overall, it is not just those that have the hands on the keyboard that would be affected. So we all have to learn how to work together to respond. So we've taken cybersecurity training and we've almost gamified it, if you will. We look at it like a team sport. What's happening in the cockpit also translates over into the cabin, right? So that's kind of how we like to work. We like to focus on involving multiple individuals and making it a team sport. So I've already talked about sort of the hands-on experiential training. We think that's beneficial to really put into practice what we've learned in the certifications. So in order to make that happen, we've created a realistic environment that sort of simulates a real world, so that when we're going through and working through the training modules, we have sort of a sense of place to work within. So I mentioned, Michigan really being at an advantage, but because of our partnership with CANRIN, you're able to leverage, a lot of the resources that we have here. But we do consider ourselves a national leader in this space, and, thankful for the governor's initiatives to make that happen. We have, in terms of the cyber range and collaboration, the Michigan State Police, the Michigan National Guard, we have a cyber corps, and obviously we're all working together, all of those entities working together with the range. So I'll just talk from a high-level perspective about those relationships and how we work together. Whenever we do exercises, we always involve and encourage entities and organizations to involve the Michigan State Police. It's good to know who to call, when to call them, and practice that before an event happens, right? We also involve the National Guard. The state of Michigan is very fortunate to have been granted 2 cyber protection teams, which are initiatives pushed down from the federal government. So the goal long term is that we will have a nationwide National Guard force that will be trained in the area of cyber. Thank you. And then we'll talk about a little bit about the Cyber Corps. So our Cyber Corps is a civilian resource and it's a program that's managed by Merit. You can almost think of it as sort of a cyber volunteer fire department. If an organization within the state of Michigan, whether that be public or private, were to incur a breach and it was beyond their capabilities to mitigate and defend, these individuals would be sort of deployed to come in and help, or at least just stop the bleeding. They would become contractors for the government, and they would go in on behalf of the organization to try to help. It's really a huge benefit for the state in that it it puts and sets us apart from any other state. The state of Wisconsin is also trying to establish their own sort of cyber core type organization, and we're working with them. We've engaged with several other states, encourage, entities within you all's area if interested to, reach out to us, and we'd be happy to kind of talk about the plan and how we develop that out. So just to really kind of hone in on the range and how we do what we do in terms of the crawl, walk, run approach. So I've already kind of talked about the fact that it's operated by Merit. It's a program, the focus is to teach, test, and train. And one of the huge initiatives for us was to develop a space that also contained an aspect related to industrial control systems and SCADA networks. The range is accessible from anywhere. Like I mentioned, we like to look at it from a hands-on experiential training, and we want it to be adaptable. So as organizations are working through some of the various modules or various exercises, we wanted to have varying levels of difficulty so that once they train at one level, they're then able to move progressively to continue to build up and reinforce skill sets. So I think I mentioned this already, but we provide over 40 different certifications in the space of cybersecurity. Those can be offered on-site at an organization. They can be offered here at Merit. By and large, they're offered live online via a remote instructor, but it is a live instructor. We have a city that we call Alphaville that we've developed, and again, I mentioned sort of a sense of place, but it's a realistic environment that simulates a city's network of computers, and I'll show you a slide of that in a few moments. Everything that we have in terms of our hands-on experiential training has been developed by Merit, and we can also customize a lot of our hands-on training to suit the needs of the organization that we're engaged with. So the certifications, and this is actually an old slide because we now offer more than 40. We have new partnerships to now offer EC Council and ISD Squared classes. We also offer Mile2 certifications, but they focus, anywhere from pen testing to ethical hacking, forensics, some leadership, DR, cloud security. And then we like to, again, teach through structured classes, self-paced labs, and experiential learning. And I think I already mentioned the classes either being hosted at the organization or online. So we talked about sort of this progressive approach, and this slide just kind of highlights, within an organization or within maybe a city, for example, or a county or a university, you're going to have different needs. And so we've tried to seek out and vet the various training providers that are going to offer, as many possible certifications that would suit and fit the needs of the organization. So this just kind of highlights many of those. We also offer executive training seminars. So these can focus on topics starting with, just sort of a high-level threat briefing, training programs. We can even make these more granular, like Jason, mentioned in his portion, ransomware. We also have seminars that are catered to K-12, for example. We have incident response and incident handling or incident response planning workshops that we've developed. We have some that are just generic. We have some specific to certain industries, such as power companies. They're offered either half-day or full-day sessions. We can do these remote, or we can come on site. We also offer tabletop exercises. These can be sort of a canned type of exercise off the shelf, or they can be customized to suit and fit the needs of the organization. But just as shown here, they're objective-driven. We provide and start with a scenario, facilitated discussion. We're walking you through, and it's usually facilitated by either Dr. Joe Adams, who is one of our VPs, or Jason Brown, our CISO. And then we provide assessments to follow up. So for the sake of time, we've already kind of talked about the crawl, walk, run approach, so I'll just skip that slide. But I did want to talk about a few of our exercises, and one of those is to capture the flag. This exercise, as it says here, is self-paced. It can also be team-based. So once you've taken, say, a certification in ethical hacking, and you want to sort of, test those skills. This is a great place to start. Each individual is participating in this exercise receives their own iteration of the Capture the Flag. I've already mentioned the environment of Alphaville that we've created, so this is sort of a subset of Alphaville. The modules focus on pen testing, forensics. I mentioned, the SCADA focus, PII, and database security. We provide a scoring engine, so as participants are working through the modules, they see in real time live scores scrolling across the screen. It's a great exercise that can be used to sort of gauge where your skill sets are. Maybe you're trying to see, all right, who on my team has strengths and weaknesses in certain areas. This is a great exercise to accomplish that. We've also seen organizations utilize this as sort of an incentive. So if organizations, maybe your team has worked on a project for the last 6 months and you just kind of want to have a day at the end of that 6 months where they can just kind of come, have fun, and play. This is tons of fun. Again, we've sort of gamified the aspect of cybersecurity training. This is a screenshot of the scoring engine. I'm sorry, not scoring engine, of the challenges within the Capture the Flag or the CTF. All of our exercises, again, are taking place within Alphaville. It's a virtual environment, a virtual connection, so they don't have to worry about any of this activity damaging their production environment. Everything's happening in the cloud, and video feed is basically kind of pushed back and forth. Again, we've already kind of talked about the crawl, walk, run. Again, some additional exercises beyond the Capture the Flag. We have red versus red, which is kind of force on force. The objective is to penetrate a system, plant a flat flag, secure your system so no one comes in, and you've won that area. Red versus blue, which is sort of attack, defend, and then incident response exercises, which are more in line with what folks kind of do on a day-to-day basis if they were to incur a breach. So we've already talked about Alphaville. It represents sort of an ecosystem, a sense of place. It gives you that experiential, live, hands-on training. And then this is the network of Alphaville. This is the computer system. So as you can see, there are over 100 of virtual machines, all kind of interconnected and networked together. We have the residential area. Here's our SCADA component. There's a school, library, city hall. There's Zenda, which represents our private or small business, if you will. There's the ISP, Alphaville ISP. So all of these are networked together, representing sort of a city entity. And I think I'll stop here because for the sake of time, I think we have 2 minutes to go, and I didn't know if there were questions or if Melinda had any other feedback or comments.
Thanks, Jamika. Do you guys have questions for, obviously we could go for
Are you guys still able to hear us okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Any questions for the merit team?
How do we engage them? Camera it or contact them directly?
Yeah, the question is how do you engage them? And I would suggest, we have a partnership with them. So on our website under initiatives, you can link to the merit team. And I'm sure at the end of the presentation there are contact information in there. Cameron is willing, and we're trying to navigate, this is new territory for us, but we are willing to coordinate events. Part of our challenge is figuring out what you all want. And if there's a need at your organization and you're interested in a certain aspect of cybersecurity training, high level immediate penetration testing or certain aspects of that, please let me know. And my cards, I have some cards up here. We're glad to facilitate those. We can do a hybrid course as well, so you may, it's hard to do this training when you're at your location because you'll get disrupted, right? So
Canron can organize a location, whether it's at our office or one of your locations, and coordinate with Merit to come on site, or we could coordinate potentially to be part of a course. So there's lots of options, and we're glad to do the most cost-effective option for you all. So, other questions for the Merit? Do you guys have anything to add to that, Jamaica? Okay. Any other questions? I don't know if I can go up. Anybody?
For the sake of time, if Melinda has, if people have other questions and want to ask her here as we speak about photos, feel free to do that.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
we can stay a little bit.
We're glad to help you with any particular needs that you have. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is, it's for questions to get the audio. You can actually toss it up people.
In the middle of working on a presentation for the Secretary of and it got her. Luckily, she had to close it and it's open to
I basically reformatted almost two. They are.
You're going to give me a quick audio check here.
previous version was 21.
Well, that's a dangerous game, though. The previous version is gone, it's going to go all the way back.
No, I
Well, yeah. I don't know, I want to get ahead of it, but I don't care. But this one, they offered some stuff about, how you do it.
Good morning. There's quite a group in here now. Everybody's had coffee, breakfast. We're ready to start another session here. And I'd like to get started on time so that we can move through these. There's one more after this. So it is my pleasure to introduce two of our staff here at Washburn University that will be presenting right now. Captain Chris Enos from our police department and Lyle Ford from our IT department here at Washburn. And they will be speaking to you and showing you lots of fun surveillance video, I believe, and talk about leveraging IP surveillance technology for making college campuses safer. So without further ado, take it away.
I'll let Lyle start, but just as a quick note, Brenda is a very important part of our team that manages the closed-circuit television on the campus. So although she's not up here on the stage, she's a very important part of what we do every day with that. So I appreciate your help, Brenda.
Okay, and I'm going to begin with the kind of the more boring technical overview, and then Chris is going to show you some really exciting footage and how this system is actually utilized by the police department and to make the campus safer. So I'm just going to get right into it. Okay. So the first thing, when you plan a system, there's a couple things that you might be doing on your campuses. One of the things we had this old, back in 2006, 2007, an old analog system. And so we had to do a big migration to IP because the old analog system wouldn't scale. You may be starting from scratch, but if in building a security camera system, but the one thing you'll need to plan for is what they call the 3 R's. And that's resolution, retention, and reliability. There's also what I like to call rate or frame rate, kind of goes hand in hand with resolution, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So resolution, what is resolution? Well, resolution can be, if you're talking about film, if you're talking about video, if you're talking about, it can mean a lot of different things, but so I just want to keep a general definition as, it can be thought as the detail that an image holds. And image quality is really the function of resolution. If you have a higher resolution, you're going to have better image quality, but you'll also have increased bandwidth and storage requirements. So, and really another way to think about resolution is you want to use for the app, it's very specific to the application. So certain applications you might want a multi-megapixel high-res camera. Other applications you may be fine with, we still have a lot of analog cameras that are at the 4SIF level, which is very close to NTSC video. That's your old standard definition. So there's several resolutions. Just keep in mind, the more resolution you have, the more bandwidth and storage increases. Retention. Retention is simply, how long do I need to keep this recorded footage? And going back to the resolution, the frame rate, the codec that you use to record the video is going to impact all your storage considerations and your network bandwidth considerations. So popular recorded codecs for CCTV is MJPEG. That is probably the most storage intensive. It's not used a lot, but it records frame by frame. MPEG-2 is still out there, MPEG-4 for old standard video, and then H.264, which has become kind of almost the video standard across the board, and is required if you're getting into your high definition multi-megapixel cameras. You're going to need to use the H.264 codec because the older MPEG-4 codec won't do it. And like I said, it's the new standard because it offers really high compression, but also really high image quality from the old ones, and it's required for HD. And the easiest way to plan for storage requirements is to use a storage calculation tool. And this would be Depending on the security camera system you're evaluating, usually the DVR or the NSM will actually have your vendor will provide a storage calculator. And you'll want to do that immediately as you plan. So how many cameras, what frame rates are they being recorded at, what resolution, what codec are we using, for how long. And you can plug all those into it. I mean, they also have complicated formulas, but you plug these numbers into it, and it will tell you about how much storage space you need, how much network bandwidth. Like I said, frame rates. Frame rates kind of goes hand in hand with resolution. Increasing frame rate is going to also increase bandwidth and storage requirements. Now, NTSC television, your standard def uses 30 frames a second. That's considered full motion. But that's not really required for most video surveillance applications, except for casinos. Casinos want to have that 30 frames so they can count card counters who are trying to pull little tricks and stuff. But for us on the college campus, we don't really need 30 frames. So some industry guidelines, PTZ motion cameras, you do want a higher frame rate. We put our cameras at 15 frames a second, and that's pretty much industry standard because you got all that movement. And the codec can't, it's generating iframes, P frames, and it can't, you got to have a higher frame rate to keep up with that. For cash registers, teller stations, money counting stations, you'll also want a higher frame rate of about 15 frames a second. For building hallways, we keep ours down to 5 frames a second. It's not necessary. That's an adequate one to where you can catch faces and identify people. And then for your stationary street cameras and your stationary parking lots, those you can put down clear to 3. If they're not a PTZ, you can have those at 3 frames a second. So the third R was reliability. Lots of things to consider with reliability. Availability. You want to avoid single points of failure. Scalability. Does the system allow for growth without major changes? And simplicity. Really important that the people, the dispatch office and the police officers that are using this technology, that it's easy for them to use and they can get the information and video that they need out of the system. So now I just kind of want to talk real briefly about, we migrated from a very old CCT system starting back in 2006. We started planning for it. We rolled it out in 2007. But what you can see on the screens here is we have an old analog rack full of equipment. We have different mismatched recorders. Everything was stored in the dispatch office. The analog system, all the cameras either came in via copper coax or fiber, and everything behind this rack was just, it was built real well, but it had kind of suffered from, when you start, it was really showing its age. And to continue down the analog path would have required us to buy another rack like this and only use another 48 cameras. So it really didn't scale. We were storing this big thing that was putting off a lot of heat in the dispatch room. So, the heat was really, and it just was not, and of course we had some cameras on this tiny little monitor, and then we had other cameras that were just stacked up. So it was to the point we needed to just rip it out and replace it. And so what we did, we migrated to, and at the time too, we also put in a bunch of cameras in Stouffer, our science hall, and also the LLC. And we selected IP cameras for those because they're easy to deploy, and you don't have to run copper to them. You just run a Cat6 cable back to the switch. Makes it really easy, but we needed a system that could support IP, and we needed to migrate our analog cameras to digital. And so, but once we did that, we were able to, you can see the before and after, able to put all the cameras up on one central viewing station, condense everything here on the viewing station to a very, very small rack, and then we were able to migrate all those DVRs and recorders back to our data center, so that they didn't have to be putting off heat and and the dust and all that stuff. Just a much better situation. So.
It made for a much better workspace in there. Obviously, you can see that wall of analog monitors took up a lot of room in a very small space, not to mention the heat. And so now we had a much more refined and nice looking workspace, which allowed us to do more in our dispatch center.
So that was kind of, I don't know, version 2.0. This is our version 3.0. Our system was, we needed to do another upgrade, add more cameras. The Morgan Hall building did. It was really easy to scale up. We just basically ordered new hardware, it integrated with it, so a lot less for this round of upgrades. It was very simple. We were able to keep the same kind of design. Nothing really changed except we got new upgraded boxes, new upgraded DVRs to handle the rest of the cameras. The cameras that were IP, we're able to just basically plug them into the same, put them in the same VLAN, have DHCP, give them an IP address, and they're ready to go. And our analog cameras were already integrated, so we were able to add a lot more monitors to view all these extra cameras.
The other challenge technically that we're dealing with this least recent iteration, this upgrade, was that the KBI building came online, and you guys were down there yesterday, some of you. You saw the cameras. The number of cameras in that building almost doubled the cameras on our campus. There's as many cameras in that one building as there is on our entire campus. And so that's a challenge for us to be able to monitor all of those cameras. Plus, they use a different system. We have Pelco, and they have
Milestone with access cameras.
And we're still working on the technical marriage of that and trying to get that to where we're able to view both systems at the same time. So
yeah, the interoperability is a component of CCC or IP camera systems. It's on its way. It's just not quite there yet. So if you have two different systems, there may be some challenges integrating cameras from different systems.
So this is just another shot of inside our communication center with a little bit of a close-up on some of the things that are in there. The thing in the upper right-hand corner is the command stick or the control stick for the camera system. They're able to select any one of those different cameras, make it full screen, and then control any PTZ, pan, tilt, zoom camera using that joystick on the right. And when you're tracking different things and looking at multiple different cameras, it's a very functional piece of equipment because you can hop right from one camera to the other and keep track of those different things. And I'll kind of show you a demonstration of that here in a little bit. So. This is just another close-up kind of showing you what those displays show. These are different cameras located throughout one building pretty much. There's maybe one or two buildings mixed in there. But at any one of those, you see the highlighted green box, they're able to select that box, pull it up, and make it full screen and view what's going on that particular camera. They can also do playback, obviously, of any of these cameras, so they can select that camera and then actually start rewinding live what just happened and playback and see what happened. So. Again, just another shot of one of the monitors and what we're seeing on those monitors. One of the big issues that we're having now is the number of cameras and the number of displays that we have just aren't sufficient. We don't have enough displays to monitor all the cameras live. And so what Lyle is working to do is cycle those cameras through. So we'll get a glimpse of that camera for a few seconds, and then it'll cycle through to the next one. And that allows us to monitor cameras a little bit better because we're able to see shots of each camera as it rolls through. So.
Okay, yeah, I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but basically, so integrating we had several analog cameras. They were coming in on fiber ore, and we relocated this downstairs to our PBX. And what you're seeing here is you have several racks of encoders. And so then all those copper cables are plugged into here. Once it hits this, it hits the network. where it's digitized and it's available as just almost like any other IP camera. And that's kind of, so we were able to take out all that stuff upstairs and relocate it downstairs into a data room. And this would be in our server room. We got recorders, we have a system manager, and a backup system manager. And these are current, we just actually migrated to SEB, so now we only have 2 recorders and a system manager and a backup. They're RAID level 6, so you can lose 2 drives on each side of the RAID and not lose any data, so it's very redundant, we can real small footprints and handles our recording needs very well.
So Lyle talked to you about the back end a little bit. Now I'm going to kind of talk to you about the front end and why we do what we do with the cameras. First of all, I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to come visit with you today. Lyle tells me that if this goes well, we're taking this on the road, so we're going to be at Google I/O next year and maybe CES, right? That's what you told me. So there's a lot of expense, obviously, in putting a system like this together, but there are a lot of advantages to having a closed-circuit TV system on your campus. It provides live intelligence of what's going on out in the field for us, and it allows us to multiply our force with not having to have as many people out there. So with one set of eyes, we're able to see a large part of the campus. If I didn't have that, I would have to have police officers all over the place to do that same exact thing. So it multiplies our force without having to pay somebody to be out there on every street corner and every building. So one of the things that I'm asked a lot from students is, if we can make investments in our safety and our security, what should we do? More help phones, more police officers, and my answer is always more cameras, because it has proven itself as a technology that allows us to go back and not only see live events, but also go back and investigate what happened. Now, a lot of times we may not catch the actual event on the camera, but as I interview the parties involved, it helps me to corroborate what they're saying or disprove what they're saying. And oftentimes that's just as important. So if somebody tells me, well, but I was at the LLC until whatever time, and I can go back and look at the video and say, no, that actually is not true. And it just helps us as an investigative tool to prove that those things did or didn't happen. So the other part of it that we don't often think about is just the deterrent factor. And this is probably the biggest part, honestly. I was reading a story actually this morning about Britain's rollout of closed-circuit TV in one of their neighborhoods, in one of their local areas. And they saw a 30% reduction in crime the year after they installed those street cameras. They just put them on different corners. They're actually looking for intelligence on the IRA bombings, but what they got was a total reduction in crime by 30%. I don't know if that same correlation is found in other places, but I can tell you at Washburn it has a very big impact. If you're a criminal looking to victimize somebody and you come to the Washburn campus and see the cameras all over the place, you're probably going to go somewhere that's a little softer target, a little easier to do, because they see this. And then the other thing is the reputation. So criminals, believe it or not, talk to each other, and word gets out pretty quick that, man, don't go to Washburn, man, they have me on video doing this and that, and word just spreads very quickly that our system is effective. We will see it on video. Even if we don't catch you doing it right then, we may be able to send out those intelligence flyers saying, do you recognize this person? Do you see this person? Do you know this car? And get good intelligence back on that days later. And it's also a display of commitment to public safety on the part of the university. When our students come here, it's fun to be able to say, look at all the cameras. You are in a safe environment here, and I can show you some of the footage to show you what we're seeing and what we're monitoring. So we've had some very good success stories here at Washburn. As our system has been installed and then grown out, the beginning was here when I started 10 years ago. I think it started about 15 years ago when they actually started implementing the cameras. Is that right? About then. And when I came on board, it was the analog cameras, and we've installed many since then. The IP cameras have really changed things for us a lot because they're cheaper, they're easier to install, and the quality is much better. And so it's really kind of burgeoned into this bigger thing than what we had when I first started. But as we expanded the camera system, we've seen a lot of successes. We had a lot of issues, of course, in a college dorm, residence hall, sorry. How many people lived in a residence hall when they were in college, right? And you know some of the things that went on in the hallways and things every night. And as a result of that, we see a lot of criminal damage, just kind of minor mischief stuff that becomes problematic over the course of a year. It starts to add up, right? When you're painting walls and replacing carpeting and doing these things because of the silliness, it starts to add up on a monetary basis. Where it really started to become an issue was we had a fire, an arson fire in the residence hall. It wasn't necessarily an intent to burn the building down or anything. It was just a kid messing around with a lighter, walked out of the room, and the fire was still going when he did it. It was actually in an elevator. And that prompted the university then to look at installation of the cameras inside the residence hall, which was kind of an issue. Nobody wants to live in an area where they're constantly surveilled by Big Brother, but by the same token, we have this trade-off with safety. And at that point, the university said safety really needs to come first. And at great expense, they installed cameras throughout the residence halls. As a result of that, we've seen a marked decrease in criminal damage inside that residence hall. We actually installed the cameras inside elevators, which is interesting, to say the least, because they're constantly moving up and down, and so is that cabling. But so far, that has been working good for the last, 8 years now. So, and we do see those things happening on the camera. Still happens today, but we're able to respond to that much more effectively. We are able to go back and get the intelligence and look and see who that was. I don't know who it is. All I know is I see a person doing it, but the RAs that live in that small community can easily say, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. You need to go talk to him about that. So it's been really good. The same thing in our exterior areas. I have some video of some kids that came here just to throw eggs in toilet paper. Don't know why, just something to do that night. But the operator sees that and responds officers over there. And that intelligence, that story gets out quick. That reputation gets out quick. If you go there to do your stuff out in the parking lots and stuff, they're going to get you, right? And so kids talk to each other and they know you just don't do that stuff in the parking lot because the police are going to come over and get you. So same thing with vehicle burglaries and building burglaries. We've seen a marked decrease in our vehicle burglaries over the last 8 years. We still have a few, but definitely fewer than we ever have in the past. And I think a lot of that, again, is as the reputation of our closed-circuit TV system and our police department expands out there, people know it's better just to go to another parking lot because the chances of you getting caught here are much higher. So our building burglaries is another one that's kind of interesting, and Brenda might be able to speak to this even a little bit too, is that we had a lot of issues apparently before I came with our music hall being burglarized. They would go in, break into the building at night, and go and grab instruments. Instruments are quick cash. They can take them upon them and get rid of them real quick. And so they took steps to secure the instruments with lockers and different things. So they broke in and then broke into the lockers. Not too hard, right? And so finally they said, you know what, let's spend some money and put some cameras up in that building. And after that, we haven't had any. It just stopped. And I can kind of say the same thing about one of our off-campus vehicle compounds. The thing was constantly being broken into. The vehicles were constantly being broken into. We did have a camera there, but it wasn't effective. It just wasn't able to see deep into that compound at night. And so, again, the reputation was, well, yeah, there's a camera, but obviously we're still able to get in there and they're not catching us. So we actually had another vendor come out and put cameras inside that compound. After that, no more burglaries in there. So word gets out quick, and if they do try and burglarize it, we're able to respond quickly. We're able to see that on the video and respond quicker. And so when you look at placement of those cameras, it's really important that you make it effective. So, and then the last thing is our sexual assault investigations. This is huge. We've had several that sexual assault investigations that we were able to move to prosecution because of the video cameras that we have on the campus. Sexual assault investigations by their very nature are sometimes difficult to prove. You're talking about one or two people, and it's usually one party saying this and the other party saying, no, it didn't happen. And if you're able to corroborate those stories through video, it makes it a much better case. And we've had several of those that actually helped us to decide we've got to take this one to prosecution, and the prosecutor says, oh yeah, this is an easy one to prove because of the video. So, okay. So as we look at installation, there's a lot of things that you need to consider when you look at the specific cameras and the camera system. The cost versus benefit. And we've talked about some of the benefits, but of course there's a cost associated with that. And so you have to really look and say, am I getting the best bang for my buck here? At Washburn, certainly that's been the case, and we continue to expand as a result of that, our closed circuit TV system. But I think each installation, you have to kind of decide. If you're having thefts of 50-cent candy bars and you're installing a $300,000 camera system to stop that, probably maybe not the most effective financial thing. If you're having the burglary to your buildings, the loss of a good reputation for your campus, and you're losing thousands of dollars of instruments every night, that couple $100 or a couple $1,000 that you use to install that camera system is well worth it. Okay. The other thing is the ongoing maintenance and upkeep. You have the initial installation costs, but one thing that we're really trying to grapple with now is there's also ongoing maintenance and upkeep that has to be done to the cameras. Lyle's a one-man show when it comes to maintenance and upgrades and upkeep, and so he stays very busy. He has other duties on this campus as well, and as our camera system continues to expand, that's one of the things that we really struggle with. Just keeping the domes clean on the exterior cameras can be sometimes problematic. I mean, they get dirt and dust on them, so somebody's got to go around periodically and kind of just wipe them off, and not to mention if you have breakdowns or other issues with the camera system. And as you continue to expand that, just like any computer network, the more devices that you have, the more issues that you're going to have. So, another consideration is, do you keep it in-house? Do you have a Lyle on staff? Do you have a Brenda on staff? Or do you have to go to a vendor every time that something happens? And again, I think you guys, Lyle and Brenda, could speak to this a little bit. It was a lot better for us to pay Lyle to go to the training to learn to do that stuff than having to keep calling vendors in who you're now waiting on their schedule to get things fixed. It also costs a lot more over the course of years, so something to consider as well. And then I kind of touched on this earlier. You must have that adequate monitoring capability, and that's one of the things that we're starting to get to the very limits of that. When you look at how many panels and how many monitors that one dispatcher has to monitor, it becomes ineffective. And so you almost have to look at hiring somebody just to monitor those cameras to do it in an effective manner if you want that live intelligence, right? The playback will always be there, but if you're looking to go and address something that's happening now, you really have to have the capability of monitoring all those cameras at one time. So, and then finally, the training. If your staff is not trained well enough to be able to quickly and easily access and archive that video, then it really is no use to you. And we run into this a lot. We have to go to convenience stores to do follow-up on different crimes and stuff, and I'll walk in and say, hey, you got video in here. Oh yeah, I got no idea how to run that thing, man. I don't even know the password for it. Well, then it's pointless, right? Why even have the thing? If you don't train your staff to use it and use it effectively, then it don't even install the thing. So a couple of things that we've been dealing with lately as our system continues to grow and our campus continues to grow is, where do we put the cameras? How do we decide how we get that most bang for our buck and how we get the most effective cameras? So if you're looking at placement of your cameras, these are some of the things that we found that higher is better. And I'll show you some examples of this here in a little bit. But if you can get the camera up to a higher location, you get a better view of everything, and so you get more bang for your buck. That camera can reach out there and see things. If I put it low to the ground and there's obstructions, I only get to see what's right here in front of the camera. Whereas if I had placed it higher, and Lyle hates this, but Lyle has to go where no man wants to go a lot of times to fix these cameras now. But we get more bang for our buck for that camera now. We're able to use it more effectively because it's out there and we can see farther. So.
And yeah, you should consider too, when you have to service these cameras, Actually, we have some cameras that are accessible by roof, and so I can go up, swing the arm around, service the camera if needed. Other times, we do have some cameras in locations that are on poles or on the sides of buildings. That requires, we got to get a lift out, so we got to call the campus electrician. He's got to schedule it. So, consider, installation, but also service challenges down the road when you install those cameras.
So we've also found that corners provide more viewing capability. If I put that camera on the face of a building here, it can't see around that corner. Whereas if I put it up on the corner of a building, now I'm getting 270 degrees of viewing capability versus 180 degrees. So if you're able to put it high up on a corner somewhere, that's really going to give you the most bang for your buck for that camera, because you're getting a big portion of that viewing angle for the pan-tilt zoom cameras versus just 180 degrees. So there's obviously some privacy considerations. I mentioned that in the residence halls earlier. We all want safety and security, but not necessarily at the cost of our privacy. And so we have not really dealt with that issue here on our campus too much. Most people are quite happy with having the cameras around there. The expectation actually is from our citizens and from our community that there will be cameras, and that they, when something happens, they say, well, can't you go look at the video footage for that? And so we haven't really dealt with that, but in a lot of communities, the idea of having cameras on every corner and in every building is a little bit problematic. And so you really need to engage your community in that conversation if you're looking at installing these in different places, and make sure that they're comfortable with what happens. And I think that transparency is important. If somebody has a concern about our camera system, I invite them in to come take a look and see what the capabilities are. Because if you think that we can peek into your windows at night, that's not happening, right? And I can actually show you that it doesn't happen. There's also some places where our cameras would be able to do that, but then we actually screen or could screen those windows digitally. So if our camera operator swung the camera over to a residence hall window, it would be digitally blurred, and they can set that up in the software so that you can't see in that window even if you tried to. So, okay. And there's obviously the technical limitations, and Lyle can kind of touch on some of those. If I say, hey, Lyle, I want to put a camera 6 miles out in the country because we have this space out there that we want to monitor, he tells me no, and I don't understand why. So I'll let you talk.
Well, I'll say, anything's possible, but, but yeah, it comes down to, we do have, we really like these new IP cameras because you can deploy them, plug them back into a switch, but, there's a limitation on Cat 6, obviously, and so we're tied to that. So in a lot of places, we still are using all these outside cameras you see on poles, for example. They are either terminated by fiber or copper or some combination of the two. And so, that's one thing to consider is, but in some places, like the Valley Field camera, we have one that's way up and it just went down, and we replaced it with a high-def camera that Chris is going to show you here in a little bit. But, and we did replace it with an IP camera, but to do the run, we had to do the fiber thing, and so we had to convert IP to fiber and then back to IP again to get it into our system. So, and obviously that took some additional cost, but the location of the camera is just excellent. It can see like probably half a campus or a quarter of campus, and so it made sense in that situation to do that. So you just have to weigh the cost and the benefits and the limitations of the technology too.
And then a lot of those are powered by Ethernet, power over Ethernet, and so you can't take it too far away from the switch.
The switch, yeah.
So as you're looking at the location, if you're putting it on a building or someplace, you really have to consider that cable run and how far away that is, and that can sometimes limit you a little bit too. So, and then the last thing is survey that site. Don't just say, I want a camera right there. Go out and actually try and get yourself into that viewpoint and find out what do you see from there, because that's what you're going to see on the camera. You want to look at trees and vegetation and how much they restrict things. So don't go up there in December and say, yeah, this looks good, because in July, I got bad news for you. It doesn't look so good, and I'll show you why. And then also consider new construction. If your university is planning to build a 4-story building here where you're putting your new $3,000+ camera, all of a sudden it doesn't do you any good, and you're going to have to pay to move that camera. So think about that as well. So this is a camera. These are just some of the viewpoints that we're seeing from this camera to kind of illustrate what I mean by the vegetation issue. And I don't know if you can see the mouse up here, but there's a sidewalk that runs behind these trees. And in the fall and the winter, once the trees the leaves are gone, I've got an excellent view of that sidewalk and the people that are on it. Now, this time of year, I do not. Obviously, the trees have bloomed out, and I'm losing sight of the roadway down here, which in the wintertime, I've got excellent visibility. And then also this parking lot across the street from the camera. So now this camera is pretty much hemmed in on almost all sides by trees, right? In front, behind, on the sides, and I'll show you some more here. So this is the other way, looking down the other way, and now all I see is a tree. Now, some of this, you could trim the trees back a little bit, but still, you're not going to be able to chop all the trees down. They kind of frown upon that. They like their trees. And so I lose visibility of that entire parking lot now because of the tree growth. Now, what we're looking at doing there is moving that camera to the top of a building on the corner where we'll still be, even with the trees, be able to see most of that stuff. So this is one of the areas on our campus right now where we're doing a site survey and looking at how we can better surveil this area. We have a lot of foot traffic in this area at night, and we really want to be able to provide safety and security there through a camera. But as you can see, there's a lot of tree growth right there. There's a lot of vegetation in that area. There's a lot of building obstructions. And so we've kind of looked at different things. You can put that on a pole. You can put it up there on that light pole up there and look down, but you're still at about tree height. And you're really not getting a good view of all the different sidewalks and all that kind of stuff. So if we look at the view from that building, so this is on the building, kind of up where that dish is, actually right on the corner of that. If you put it there, now you've got a much better view of all those different pedestrian traffic ways, the lawn areas, and some of the other gathering points right there. So just something to consider when you're looking at where you're going to place your cameras. So. Okay. Anything else, Lyle?
Yeah.
So I've got some different demos and video footage that I'll show you from our system. And bear with me. Hopefully we don't have demo fail here. So this first one, I just kind of wanted to demonstrate the user interface and what we see from a user standpoint. And so I did a screen capture of our system in our office and kind of what I see when I sit at my desk if I use this system. And it doesn't, the screen capture doesn't really do it justice because it's grabbing frame by frame, and it's much more fluid when you see it in person, but it gives you an idea of what we see. So inside the user interface, the software that we have, there's different workspaces that you'll see the different tabs up there at the top. And you can set, the pool of cameras is over here on your left. Those are all the different cameras that we have to choose from. There's a lengthy page of them. And you can pull those cameras over to this workspace and drop them in and view them. There's different configurations that you can set those monitors up as. This goes full screen. So here, in this particular workspace, I've chosen to put that camera big in the middle. In the next workspace, you just right-click and go to the next workspace, and now I'm viewing the inside of one of our buildings here. And I can double-click on any of those pictures, and it makes it full screen, so I can see what's happening right there. Then I can, even if I need to, go back and rewind and play back video from that particular area. Right-click, go to the next workspace, and now I'm looking at different footage from different buildings and different areas on our campus. And so real quickly, just one person can jump around to many different places on our campus and just see what's going on in different areas. So if there's a threat to our safety right now, it's very nice to be able to say what's happening in this building, what's happening in this building, and what's happening here right now. And so this just kind of gives you an idea of how you work in that workspace. So again, you see the green box highlighting which camera is selected. And it's kind of hard to tell up on this screen, but you can really kind of see the difference between the newer high-def cameras and the older standard definition cameras. And Lyle can kind of talk to you about the differences there. But what I see from the user's standpoint is much better clarity and much better color resolution. So
One of the things with the advent of multi-megapixel cameras, you know, people ask me with the old standard def, you know, well, can you digitally zoom in, you know, like CSI stuff, enhance, you know. And if you tried that with the old cameras, you'd try to zoom in on somebody's face and you could do it, but it would block out and you'd get this Lego man looking guy. With the multi-megapixel cameras, it's like we're living in the future because you can actually do that. You can enhance even on the recorded footage. So you can go in and zoom in and you can read a license plate, or and in combination, the digital zoom with the optical zoom, it's pretty incredible what kind of image you can get. I believe the question was, have we standardized the cameras we're using? For the most part, we are on a Pelco system, which is you can use cameras. They do provide integration with other systems. Our analog cameras, we kind of run the gamut. We've got some Crest, we got some Pelco, we got there's several things, but for the most part, all of our new IP cameras are all Pelco Spectra 4s and the Spectra HDs and so forth.
So this is footage that was archived. So once it's saved on our DVRs, it's saved for a period of time. And I don't like to discuss how long that is just for security reasons. I don't want somebody saying, oh, well, I know that video's gone in X number of days, so I'm good to go after that. So we won't really talk about how long we keep that video here. But after a certain point, it does get erased. The DVR just kind of works over the last drive space that's available and just rewrites over that old stuff. But it kind of does it frame by frame. So I may have video from X number of days ago that is 100% clear and 100% frame rate. And then over a period of weeks, that starts to degrade. And so I may only get a few frame grabs of that video that's weeks old, but I still have some of it, okay? Until finally it's just completely overwritten. If I want to save that permanently, I have to export that. And when you do, you use this player, Endura player. And that's what we're looking at now, is just some video that was exported to this Endura player. So if I had to take this to court and demonstrate for the court what I saw on the camera system, this is how we would do that. So
just so you know, a couple minutes left of our session.
okay.
And I want to be able to give folks a few questions here, but if you've got a few more videos.
So this is, and you can ask questions while we're looking at this video. This video was taken, let's see here, about a month ago. This is not live, so don't panic. So this video was taken a few weeks ago during a tornado warning in Shawnee County here. So we were watching a storm come in, and as you can see, it starts to get a little bit dark. And then I'm listening to the radios in our communication center and hearing traffic from outside in the county saying that they're starting to see some rotation to the west of the city. And so then I'm putting the camera on that and kind of watching it. The thing that is a little bit misleading here is we're watching it at 16 speed, so 16 times normal. But if you watch the cloud formation at this speed, I thought this was pretty amazing video. It also kind of shows you the capability of these cameras. We're looking at stuff. That blinking tower is about 1.5 miles from us there, and then those clouds are actually on the west side outside of the city. So you're looking at footage from probably 3 to 4 miles away, if not more. So, and at this point, the Shawnee County had started to place the county under, or the National Weather Service has actually started to place Shawnee County under a tornado warning, which I thought was appropriate when I started seeing this. And so we were sounding the alarm bells, but I also wasn't panicked because I could see that we didn't have an active tornado on the ground at this point. But I'm able to provide that intelligence to our campus community and say, hey, stay in your shelters. There is an active, wall cloud here. There is something that is forming. And yeah, in live intelligence, this is pretty good, right? I can say, hey, this is what's happening from the safety of my shelter. I'm not having to be out on the street watching this. So, are there other questions while we're kind of watching this? Yes.
Let me get this mic to you.
Thank you. What policy and procedures do you have written up? Do you have policy and procedure Something specific I run into quite a bit is I'll have a manager or somebody want to view video just to check up on something on an employee. Sometimes to me it comes across that they're a little overzealous. I often ask them, why do you not go to them first rather than stalk them on camera? That's just my opinion, but
we haven't had that, actually, thank goodness. There have been a few incidents that were personnel related. They weren't necessarily criminal acts. And in those, we try and assist the best we can. If the university is facing some legal liability from something, then that's still a worthy cause as far as I'm concerned. If it's just, hey, I want to see what time my employer arrived to work today, no, that's not what our cameras are for.
do you have anything official written up for that, or is that just?
No, it's really a case-by-case basis, and hopefully we don't have to establish that. I hope that doesn't come down to that, but we may, if it happens.
So my question's along the same lines. You said you can't tell us retention
Right.
of the video, but is there a policy-making body that makes those determinations for everything related to surveillance cameras on campus?
There is a technical steering committee, I guess? Technology
Yeah, we have a
steering
tech
committee.
steering committee.
And so if there's issues related to that, we would probably put that in front of the technology steering committee. Right now, we haven't really addressed those issues. We haven't had those issues. I think really if your community sees that you're using your system in an effective and trustworthy manner, you shouldn't have those issues really. And transparency is a big thing. Like if you want to know what we're looking at, come in and look at it, right? I'll show you. And so I think as long as we're able to do that, we haven't had any issues with that. So.
And they did touch upon the technology steering committee. This is technology on our campus, so things that may need policies will go through that committee to be vetted and made. So additional cameras that are bought and placement, not only do we work with the police department and Chris specifically, but usually funding and stuff for those goes through that technology steering committee, and the vice presidents sit on that committee.
So I kind of mentioned that inside our residence hall, we've had issues with vandalism and different things, and this is just kind of a highlight of one of the things that we see here. So this is at 1 o'clock in the morning, and this is in a lobby, and this is kind of what we see in our residence halls. What we look at is the lobbies, the entrances and exits, the elevators, and that's about it. We don't, obviously we're not looking into living areas. We're not looking down the hallways even. For the most part, we're looking at stairwells and public access areas. It's really about safety for the most part. So yeah, a lot of... Yes, there is. And then the video that I was showing you with that user interface, that's actually in my office, and so all of our sergeants have the capability to view that at their workstations as well. So this young man walks up, pulls the fire alarm at 1:30 in the morning, and walks out. And what great video, right? Like, you didn't pull the fire alarm? Really? Because here you are, right here. And so that didn't show his face. I can't recognize him from that. But underneath this camera, I've got 3 floors of other cameras, and he's passing by each one of them. Okay? And so I'm able to grab screen grabs of him real quickly, capture those JPEGs real quick, put them on my phone, take them over to the RA, and say, "Do you know this guy? Oh yeah, that's so and so. He's up in 311. Perfect. Let's go visit with him." Right? And so just a real quick, easy tool, and we're able to charge him with evacuating that building in the middle of the night for no reason. So, and I'm sure the residents of that building really appreciated being woke up at 1 o'clock in the middle of October to go outside. What's that? Yeah, they're definitely not erased. I mean, we still have them, but we do a much better job now of being able to track those folks down, and so we do start to see less of it. Unfortunately, especially with people that have been drinking, even though there are cameras there, they're not often thinking about that when they do things, unfortunately. And so although it won't stop all of them because of that kind of stuff, it does definitely slow things down a little bit.
So Chris, Lyle, is there one more or?
Yeah, this is the
one
last
more
one.
important, okay.
And
We're
again,
a
if there's
few
other
minutes
questions,
past, so I didn't
real
want to
quick.
run
So
into our.
this is another one, that live intelligence and that live monitoring is very important. These gentlemen came over here during Christmas break to burglarize vehicles in our parking lot this past December. And our operator immediately saw this car pull in. And it's interesting that at 2 o'clock in the morning, how quick you come to recognize things on camera, because you're out of the corner of your eye, you're like, hey man, it's Christmas, there's really not many students here, what does that car do? Oh, why are they calling out the sunroof, right? Dispatch officers over there quickly. And so you kind of see quickly that live intelligence really does pay off. Oops, kind of jumped ahead there, but he's able to dispatch officers over there and give them intelligence on where these people are, like this kid's trying to run and hide as the officer. He has no idea that we're watching him from above, right? And so the operator in this is actually telling them. Now he's running behind that car right there, and there's another one sitting in a car here. The officer's over here looking for him, and the operator's on the radio telling him, no, go back over to this vehicle. He's sitting inside the vehicle. So then they're able to approach that vehicle. And
that was a stolen car.
The car they arrived in was stolen. That's why they rolled out the sunroof, because if they go out of the doors, it actually set the car alarm off. So.
All right, we're going to wrap this up, and I do want to thank Chris and Lyle. Let's give them a round of applause and appreciate it. If you do still have questions, I know they're still around here on the campus, so you can catch them here as we move to the next session. Thank you all.
And if anybody wants to come over and take a look at our system, please stop by our office. It's just around the corner over here, and Lyle can get you there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to get this session started, the last one of the day. So welcome back to another session, and we'll let you introduce yourselves, and I'll adjust your mics as we go. But thank you again for being here. Take it away.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Good morning. This is the Unified Communications at the University of Kansas. Specifically, what we're going to be talking about today is the Microsoft Skype for Business deployment at KU. My name is Tom Roderick. I'm the Assistant Director of Project Management for KU, and joining me today.
I'm Drew Walstrom. I'm our Skype for Business admin and Microsoft Systems Engineer.
So we're going to start this off talking about pretty much the last 4 years of this project. So we're going to smash 4 years of this project into the next 45 minutes and get you up to speed as to where we are today. So I know I've spoken with 5, 6, maybe 7 different colleges or universities here in the state of Kansas wanting to know how we've gotten to this point, what decisions we made along the way, and how we are gradually deploying this out on campus. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the history. And going back, and this is 4 years, maybe close to 5 years now that we've been working towards this, is the business case for this is we had an aging telephony system and a voicemail system that was end of life, end of support. And so we started looking at what are we going to do for the future of this. One of the big drivers on this was the Edwards campus, which is over in Overland Park in Kansas City. With all the expansion, new buildings that were happening over at the Edwards campus, we needed to find a very fast solution to increase the amount of telephone capacity at that location. At the same time, we were looking at what are we going to do on the Lawrence campus. We've got roughly 8,000 phone lines on the Lawrence campus, an aging technology with voice on copper lines, which is a technology that's over 100 years old. So how are we going to take that into the future? So what we did over at the Edwards campus was very quickly put in a Cisco voice over IP, and it was just the voice piece of Cisco. It was very easy to do. We already had Cisco networking over there. It was the logical solution at the time, but we still had this problem of what are we going to do on the Lawrence campus with 200 buildings on the campus, 8,000 lines. It's a huge system, and it's all running over copper. The other problem is that we're using hardware that's 20, maybe 25 years old, has not been upgraded, but there wasn't really a need to upgrade this. The software that we were using as well was 2 versions past what was current. So we took all these things into consideration and started making a plan on how are we going to move forward with this. One of the things we looked at was the decreased usage of the telephone system on the Lawrence campus. And to give you some numbers here, we looked at the past 10 years, so from 2002 up to 2012, there is a significant decrease in the amount of telephone usage, both incoming onto campus and outgoing from campus or within the campus. 2002, we were looking at roughly 8 million phone calls per year. When we got up to 2011, the last year that we were looking at, that had nearly halved. We were down to 3.5 million. So in 10 years, we went from 8 million to 3.5 million. So we saw a significant decrease in the amount of actual phone usage. And of course, at that time, we're also seeing email is being used quite a bit more. So we can see where this industry is going. So looking at future-proofing this, we saw higher ed, corporate, and even residential was moving more towards this voice over IP instead of using the copper analog lines. So we're looking at future-proofing this as well in moving towards a voice over IP. We're also seeing that all of the new buildings on campus, specifically with Edwards campus and now on the Lawrence campus, these buildings are being constructed without the copper lines inside the buildings. So instead of having copper running all through the new buildings, they're just using the networks as they're being installed. But we also wanted to provide some new services and consolidate some services. And so unified communications was the direction that we were anticipating that we would go. So for example, we didn't have an instant messaging service on campus. We had one within IT for the few hundred people in IT, but if we wanted to send an instant message to somebody in an academic setting, there was not a single instant messaging service. We also had multiple services, for example, online meetings. We had Adobe Connect. Some departments were using WebEx, some were using a GoToMeeting. So we didn't have a single service that we supported. Same thing with conference bridging. People were paying a monthly fee or an annual fee to have a 1-800 number, but then they would have to be charged per use and then per minute per participant for this conference bridge that people were going to be using. So we were looking at these services that we could consolidate for a unified communications, while at the same time taking into consideration what we were going to do for voice. So we put all this into a plan and took it up to our executive leadership at the university and said we would like to move forward with determining how we were going to do unified communications for the university and move away from some of this aging technology and bring in some of these new services. So the very first thing we did was we upgraded the Avaya. And that sounds like it's a step backwards. However, that was the plan, in that we wanted to set up a very firm foundation for building our voice over IP. Some of the issues that we were looking at is that we still had to continue to maintain some amount of analog lines for the campus. So for example, fax machines, they have to run over the analog copper lines. There's not really a good solution for voice over IP. And this is at the time, so 4 years ago when we're looking at this, there's not a good solution for faxes over voice over IP. We have building controls, so the Johnson controls that are running the fire alarms on the buildings. Those are all running over the copper lines. Security, so the security phones that you'd find in the elevators or on the walls, those types of things were all running over the analog lines, and we couldn't replicate that with voice over IP. At the same time, we have call centers. And if you've done any sort of research into unified communications, is once you get into some advanced call routing, or if you're doing call metrics, so if you want to know this specific person spent this specific amount of time answering somebody's phone call and it was routed to a different person. If you're trying to get call center metrics out of a unified communication system, there's not really a good solution unless you go third party. So at the time, 4 years ago, we identified call centers as being out of scope for this project. So what we were going to do is upgrade our Avaya system to a point where it could handle these call centers, because we were 2 versions behind. So we upgraded to the current version. And we also got to a point where it was stable and replaced a few of the hardware components so that we could build upon that and get our unified communications up and running. Once we put our presentation up forward and they said move forward, we started looking at the 3 main contenders, and that's Avaya, Cisco, and Microsoft. And at the time, it was Microsoft Lync 2010. Avaya we looked at very briefly. We found that at the time, they didn't really have a fully functioning unified communications solution. It was built on older technology. It didn't have all the components that we were looking for when compared to Cisco and Microsoft. So very quickly, we took Avaya and took them out of the consideration. At that point, we took Cisco and Microsoft and essentially had a bake-off between the two. They all have the same essential features that we're looking at for unified communications. And so we started setting up pilot environments. And so we already had Cisco deployed voice over IP on the Edwards campus. So we knew what the capabilities were for voice. We wanted to see what it could do for unified communications. The big differences that we saw at the time was Cisco was really built on hardware, their networking equipment. Microsoft really built on the software side. So of course we're going to have different examples and different testing when we're working on these. So we brought in Microsoft, which Drew's going to talk about here in a moment, and Cisco, brought in engineers who helped us design and set up pilot environments. So with Cisco, we had it set up for 25, 30 people. It was very small. It was in the computer center on essentially a pristine network. And we found that there were a lot of issues that we were having with getting it to work. We had to have VPN set up on all the desktops in order to just send an instant message between two clients. When we were trying to do desktop sharing or file sharing, it would only work if it was on wireless, on a VPN, and the 2 computers were both connected to the same access point. If they were on wired connections or if they were not connected to the same wireless access point, you couldn't do desktop sharing, you couldn't do file sharing. If you were off campus, with the VPN, we couldn't get instant messaging to work correctly. So even with the Cisco engineers in the room and with essentially a perfect network in our own building, we were having a lot of problems getting the configurations to actually work on that network. So that was one of the big considerations that we took into the decision between Microsoft and Cisco, which again was 4 years ago. But at that point we said we're going to put Cisco aside for the moment and start focusing on where we can go with Microsoft.
So this is about when I really came in the picture. So Tom has been working on it for 4 or 5 years. I've been about 3 and a half. So just really why we chose Microsoft, it kind of mirrors their strategy these days. Is they're all platforms, anywhere, everywhere. You can work wherever. it doesn't really matter. So we chose Microsoft because we have a really close relationship with them with our Premier agreement and our support and our licensing, and so it just seemed like a good fit for us. And so what we did is we brought in some consultants, set up a small pilot group. I think there were about 30 or 40 people on the first pilot group of Lync 2010. It's been about a week and a half of actual in development and getting it up and running, and it was one of those where I learned more about a phone switch and number translation and everything than I ever thought I would in my entire life. And got it up and running, and I think we ran it for probably a good 3 to 6 months, just as an internal pilot. Kind of said, hey, this is cool, we like it, we like all the features that it does with Exchange, and then all the people on the technical side started looking at the possibility of having to lose it for us to eventually go production with it. And so once we started planning that, I think we were without our unified communications between the pilot and production. We were out for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Needless to say, we were very motivated.
Yes.
And so going on next is just the on-prem versus cloud consideration. At the time, we weren't in the cloud at all. We had no Office 365, we had nothing. And so now we are in deep with SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, all that fun stuff. And so we wanted, at the time, we wanted to design something that works on-prem. We didn't have a huge need to go into the cloud. And then obviously if you take the PSTN, the voice calling and telephony stuff, the cloud wasn't there. So here's just a little snapshot of where our environment is. We have a single site, which is our Lawrence site, 2 front-end pools with house our users. We have 5 servers on each site, the edge pools, which take care of our external communication. We have a single persistent chat, which is just our ongoing chat service. We have a very small pilot of it. One of the limitations of us rolling it out is it only works on the PC version of Lync. And so mobile, Mac, all that is just didn't really scale for us.
For persistent chat.
For persistent chat, got to have fun with the wonderful world of SQL. 8 SQL servers, handle all the user databases, all the monitoring databases, all the chat history. So we have 32 servers split between 2 data centers, 228 core counts, and then 732 gigs of RAM. We are 100% virtual. So we run everything on Cisco UCS computing blades, and then we have a network load balancer that everything sits behind.
And how many people is this for?
So I ran a count, and right now we have 699 people using enterprise voice, and for the people using our basic workloads of Skype, so IM, presence, we have 50,654.
So one of the things that when we brought in Microsoft consultants to help us build this and design this, it was built for our top end so that we could get all 50,000 faculty, students, staff onto the system, but also be able to handle the voice traffic that we'd be looking at.
So kind of going in with one of the basic things with, obviously you have your internal communication, but then you also have federation and external. So federation, and that's another one of the considerations we had when we chose Microsoft, is it was just kind of the way everybody was going. I mean, just being able to send an IM to anyone in Microsoft, anybody in CDW, I mean, that was a pretty good motivator for us. So one of the things we want to talk about is we do, and anybody that is in the Skype or Lync world knows that there's the whole open versus closed federation battle, and we are 100% open, and so anybody that wants to communicate with us, you just add them, and we do require, on the second bullet point, we have a 2-way add, so it has to be a mutual add by both parties for someone to show up. And then we also have, we whitelist a couple domains for, it pretty much mirrors the internal communication, so if you have their address, you can send them a message. We federate with the Missouri system for now, and we federate with Microsoft, and then MedCenter, and then a couple others. And then obviously with the commercial Skype integration, it had some limitations in the beginning, but for what we do with international research and stuff like that, we wanted you to not have to 100% be in Skype for Business. You could also be in the Skype Consumer, or you can also have external people participating. And so that included the directory integration, audio video calls, and then obviously again the 2-way add. So go back to the features of basic Skype, and so this is rolled out to all our faculty, staff, and students. So we have the integration with Exchange and Outlook. You go in, send an email, and I've heard them called, there's chiclets, I've heard Skittles. We have different names for the little presence icons. So anybody that signed into the client, including Outlook Web Access, you can send chats, IMs, call to your heart's content. And then peer-to-peer communications, IM, audio, video. I know in the earlier pilot, people were kind of standoffish about the whole audio and video conferencing, but now we'll have people that, there'll be a meeting upstairs and the person will be downstairs and they'll be sitting at their desk and they'll dial in. For online meetings, we have there's online meetings in the sense of like webinars and stuff like that, but we really just do online meetings for like our all staff meeting, because if we had shoved every one of our IT people in our auditorium, we'd go over the fire code.
Yeah.
So online meetings is really just trying to minimize everybody having to show up. I mean, people having to drive in from Edwards campus, people having to drive in from all over the state just to hear us talk for an hour and a half. And then directory information, I mean, Skype is AD, it's Exchange. I mean, they're all meshed together and you can't have one without the other. And then mobility. I mean, Tom, right before we came up here, Tom had a work phone call on his cell phone because he was signed into Skype for Business. So being able to take those calls if you want them or reject them if you want them is pretty key.
And to give you a little bit of an idea of how much this is being used, and I'm going to go into the deployment here in a minute, but since this is up here on the screen, instant messaging right now, we're averaging about 350,000 instant messages per month. So that's the big win on this that people seem to be picking up, and that is increasing essentially every month. We're seeing that increase. And you can follow the trends. So we've been following this now for a little over a year, and we can see how it is different during the winter breaks or during the interim weeks, and we can break it down to essentially per day. We can see how this is being used. For the conferencing, we're averaging pretty close to 2,000 online web meetings per month as well. Some of those are just people talking, so it's just the audio component. Some of that is audio visual, some of that is desktop sharing. So about 2,000 of those per month. So we get into the actual migration. And so for the basic Skype, the features that we just showed up on the screen, everything except for the phone integration piece, we started to build this early in 2013. We got approval to start working on this right before the end of the fiscal year, so it would have been about June of 2013 is when we got approval for the actual funding of this. And we had the environment built, the slide a couple before this, we had this environment built by September 2013. That's when we started putting on the early adopters. So of course the first group on there was all of IT. So we took the few hundred people in IT, moved them onto basic Skype, let them play with it for a while. Drew and his team were monitoring the servers, making sure we could handle those types of loads. And of course, you know, we trusted Microsoft that they built this to a certain level, but we wanted to make sure that we could handle these types of things. We also started messing around a little bit with the voice components at this time and added a few people and just start testing that. But we spent a great deal of time doing just a stabilization, just making sure that the environment was going to work. And we started putting on just a few small departments that we knew would be accepting of this new technology, who were enthusiastic about wanting to use this technology. So we handpicked either individual people or some small departments and said, you've asked about this before, this would be great for your department, why don't you try it out? And so we started rolling those people onto basic Skype as well right after that. It was by the end of the year of 2013. One of the big issues that we had, though, was Microsoft Lync 2013 was then rebranded as Skype for Business in February 2015. So just as we were getting ready to fully launch this on campus, and we had put out these communications, we had built websites, we had said, look, Microsoft Lync is coming. You're going to all have this on your computers. Microsoft came out and said, yeah, we're going to rebrand this. So people initially had no idea what Lync was. And so we spent a great deal of time saying, this is Lync. Everybody knew what Skype was. That was the easy transition. So if that would have happened a few months earlier, we would have been fantastic. So we ran into that small hitch in our actual deployment.
It also doesn't help that the Mac client is still Lync 2011 for Mac.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all that awesomeness.
Yeah. So as of between March and by the end of April, actually by about mid-April, we had flipped the switch and put basic Lync environment was available to all students, faculty, and staff. So all students were going to be able to use it. They log on to OWA, the webmail. They were going to start seeing presence information. All faculty, if they logged on to the webmail, they were going to see this as well. For the full client, if they had this installed, the desktop client on their machine, it was going to be logging in, and they would be able to use the full functionality of the basic Skype environment. What are we doing next?
So features of voice and UM, like I said earlier, being able to place and receive calls from anywhere. My 785-864 number goes wherever I have Wi-Fi or wherever I have cell coverage. One of the things that everybody has hopped on is being able to call forward and time ring from anywhere. And I can go up my desk, I can say ring my cell phone if I don't answer after 10 rings. You can do your send all calls, no longer having to go to your Avaya and do the *2#, I think is what the action was on there, and having to be physically at your desk. And then, of course, the call notifications in your inbox. You no longer have to look for the lovely red blinky light that you have a voicemail. You get an email in your inbox. You get a notification of phone number that calls. Mm-hmm. I mean, for a lot of people, that was huge. I know a lot of people were like, yeah, I don't know about that. It's kind of... And then, of course, with the voicemail in your inbox, you also have the text transcriptions. And what Microsoft thinks you actually said, and I think at one point we were going to have a contest to who had the worst transcribed voicemail.
Yeah, we thought about doing this for the campus. Our IT communications department said that we should have a contest where people could submit their text transcriptions of their voicemail to see who was going to have the best ones. I'd say 70% accurate most of the time, but it's getting better. That's
being pretty generous.
Yeah, but there are some very, very humorous ones that do show up in your email. So talking about the deployment of the voice, and so this was the second phase. So we have everybody rolled out on the basic Skype environment, so they're getting used to it. And that's the idea, is that we were going to give everybody on campus a great deal of time to get used to using this new technology, to getting used to the client itself, where the buttons were, how you interact with people, the way that you can actually integrate it with Exchange and with web access. Those types of things. So we wanted everybody to have a familiarity with the client before we actually brought them forward and put them onto the voice system, because that was going to be somewhat of a big change for them. Essentially, we were going to be replacing their phones on their desk with this new technology. So to get them used to the client first was key. The second thing that we were looking at, and we've been working on this since the beginning, we knew this was going to be an issue, is develop a solution and the processes for E911. And so this was a huge, big key for us, because as we spoke to other universities, and some of the other universities that helped us out, University of Illinois rolled this out about a year before we started working on this, and so they had a lot of information that they provided to us. And so, for example, when they did their voice rollout, they flash cut 20,000 lines over one weekend. They said this was a huge disaster, don't do it. So I'm relaying this information to you. If you're planning on doing voice, do not do it flash cut over a weekend. They essentially had it where there was a phone on everybody's desk on a Friday when they left, and Monday morning when they came in, they had the client on their desktop, new phone, and surprise, you have a new phone system. They said it was a disaster, and that's one thing that they would do again. But they also said, look at your emergency services. What happens when you are on your desktop and you dial 911? What's going to happen?
And I'll jump in on that. And this was a kind of almost eye-opening for at least me. I went to KU. I know the scale, but I didn't realize that KU has 222 buildings, different shipping addresses, and you go from our 911 before was it would take the station ID of where your phone was. So now we went through to a solution where we run a scan of all MAC addresses on our network every hour, and then it categorizes where you are and then puts your street address, your floor, and that part is just completely independent because we have a completely different system for the wireless. So we go from, I mean, I don't even know where to begin to talk about that, because the one that's built into Skype for Business does just base subnet level, and we have IP ranges that go multiple floors, multiple buildings. I mean, it was a nightmare trying to determine the level of risk that we wanted to take.
So one of the powerful aspects of Skype for Business is that I've got my laptop with me, and during the last session I was sitting out in the lobby, I was connected to the Washburn wireless. From that desktop, if I would have seen something happen, if somebody would have fallen over in front of me, I could have dialed 911 from my desktop. Where does it go? And so we needed to solve that problem of I'm on a different wireless access. I'm at a conference. If I was in California, and I was at a conference in San Diego or something, if I saw something happen from my desktop, I could dial 911, but where does that call go? How does this laptop know that it should be calling the San Diego Fire Department or the San Diego Police Department? How would it know that I'm sitting here at Washburn and I need to call the Topeka Fire Department? Same thing with faculty. If they're on sabbatical, if they're in Europe and they're sitting at a cafe in Paris, they could have their desktop client up and running and be using their desktop client to be placing and receiving phone calls like they're sitting in their office. But if they dial emergencies, how is it going to know that they're not even in the country? So we started involving the KU Public Safety immediately, the Lawrence Police Department, the Douglas County Sheriff. We started asking all the questions of how do we need to configure this system? What do we legally are obligated to do? So we involved our general counsel. What do we have to do in order to make this actually work? And that was a very long process. Like I said, we've been working on this since the very beginning. And I believe we're going to talk a little bit more about it on the next slide, I believe.
911?
Yeah, developing 911 is one of our considerations next. So we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. So deploying voice, we did get early adopters. On the full voice system, we moved all of IT in July of 2015. And this, again, was our test environment. We put everybody on to make sure it was working. And we said, what are the issues you're having? Does it work? Do the devices work that we're handing out to people? What are the big considerations that you're having? Have you tested it on wireless? Have you tested it on wired? Have you tested it at home? Have you tested it in a hotel lobby on the really bad wireless system there? Where does it work? Where does it not work? We wanted to know all this information. So we left IT on the system for about a month before we started doing small deployments. And we started doing small migrations. And essentially, we set up a prioritization list of who would get migrated first. So the prioritization list basically goes with faculty who are going on sabbatical, people who are going to be away from their office for a significant amount of time. They're our top priority because this is a tool that they really need to use when they're away from their desk. The second one was new construction or remodeled construction. So if we have an entire unit that is moving from one building to another building, instead of taking the time to move their phones and their phone numbers and all those lines and reconnecting everything over in the new location, basically what we do is we transition and migrate them over to voice in their existing location. So then when they move, all they have to do is pick up their desktops, plug them back into the network, and they still have voice service when they move. So we have all of the new buildings, all of the remodeled areas. After that, we started looking at what departments would be easy to migrate. So the ones who are enthusiastic about this, we reached out to people on campus and said, who wants this service right now? We're going to get you moved over. You want to use it. After that, we just started working on an ordered list. And that's where we're at right now, is we're going down this ordered list of we're taking these units, we're figuring out how many people are in there, and we're getting them moved over. I guess you were going to talk about the bulk provisioning.
So one of the things that we learned very early on, especially with the IT migration, is the Microsoft wonderful world of GUIs and going through and clicking 5 boxes to do stuff and taking 2 to 3 minutes to do a single person for voice just wasn't working for us. So we did do the first couple hundred people using the old way, and then within the last 2 or 3 months, we went to a more streamlined bulk provisioning process, which right now is using PowerShell, and then we use CSV files. And so you pretty much go around, we ask for what we call our KU Online ID, so whatever your login name is, and then whatever your 5-digit Avaya extension is. Load that in there, and I think we got it down to, we did 57 one morning, and it took my part of it probably 5 minutes. And then the Avaya side took about 25 minutes. So definitely streamlined things quite a bit. And and that's reaching into Skype and doing the Skype stuff, and then reaching to Exchange and doing the Exchange stuff. And then for the 911 solution, we have a process that runs once a day that imports all the new users that have enterprise voice and gets all them ready to go. So if they were to call 911, they would show up in the system. And then, of course, with devices and provisioning those devices. So we have a couple here on the table. So you have the lovely headset that people don't like because it messes up their hair, and they have glasses and all that. And so we have that as our basic solution. Then we have 2 desk phones that we selected from Polycom. We did a huge evaluation process. I think the phone evaluation probably lasted 1.5 years at least. And that included just the basic desktop phones. And then we also have a conference room puck that we use as well. And I mean, it's a whole nother beast. It's a Linux operating system. You need to do all your provisioning out of box. You need to do all your network considerations, so that we get to the point where we are now, where I can plug this into the wall and it'll get a special network for the phone, and then I can plug my laptop into it and it'll get my VLAN for my workstation. So the considerations of, yes, we want to put more phones out there, but we don't want to have to replicate another network port just to put a phone in there.
So we've got about 10 minutes left, so we've got 2 slides here about things that we've learned and then our ongoing problems. So we'll try to get through this and leave a few minutes here for some questions. But considerations, lessons learned, the big thing is getting a strong backing of leadership. That's one of the things that we learned right away, is that we need to have a driver, someone at the top of the organization that's saying, this is a solution that we're going to use. These are the decisions that are going to be made. So very early in this process, when we were speaking at the dean level, at the executive level of the university, we asked the question of, what type of devices are we going to do? Are we going to pull an Avaya phone off of a desk and replace it with an actual phone-looking device? Is that the direction we want to go? Or do we want to go and give everybody a headset to use as their telephone, knowing that we've got decreased usage of telephone services on campus? People are not using their telephone nearly as much as they used to. What's the justification for taking a $200 phone and replacing it with another $200 phone? Or can we get away with something that's $30, $40 for a headset? One of the decisions that came down from that executive level is we should be going with a headset. Now, having that communicated down to everybody at the university didn't work nearly as well as we had hoped. But that's one of the keys here, that one of the lessons learned is, if those decisions are made, if you're going to go to all of your faculty and staff and say, we're taking your phone and we're giving you a headset as your phone, that needs to come from the highest level possible to say, this is how we're going to be doing this. So if you've got a dean who comes into a school and says, all of my faculty will use this, that's a great thing. But if you have a dean who's kind of wishy-washy, doesn't really buy into the capabilities of this, the faculty and staff are going to follow suit, and you might have some problems in that area. The second thing is, you think of every question, and it doesn't matter how ridiculous it is, you need to have an answer. As Drew just said, there were some people who looked at the headsets and said, that's going to mess up my hair every day. I don't want to use it. There were people who came in and said, I've seen your demo, and I think you're recording everything I do, that everything's going to be saved back to some server. All of my voice conversations, all of my video conferences, everything's going to be saved. So think of every possible solution, think of every possible question, and have an answer ready to go, because you're just going to get bombed with questions as soon as you start to roll this out. Big lessons learned, plan the environments, and our use of consultants, specifically with the Microsoft consultant, was critical. I don't know, back in the beginning when we started really working on this environment and planning it out and starting to look at the dial plans for the voice component and how complex they can be, it was critical that we had a consultant work with us for this. Again, developing the E911, that again was critical for this, and making sure everybody's on board and that it works correctly. And also gathering and correcting your phone numbers. During this process, we've determined that our phone directories are significantly out of date, and we have a bunch of incorrect data in our phone systems. So we have a person who might have worked here 10 years ago and has retired, but when you look them up in our directory system, that phone number is still attached to that person. And with Skype for Business, when you type in a name, it starts looking at every possible place that that person and that phone number were ever connected. And so if you dial in one phone number, it might show up with 10 people. 5 of those people are retired, 2 of those people have moved to a different department, 1 of those people might not be at the university anymore. So it's very critical that you have absolutely correct data and you gather it all together, because one of the key functions with this is one phone number goes with one user ID. And that's the critical piece, is that there can't be multiple phone numbers associated with this.
So really what we wanted to throw a slide on here. Said, I mean, we can talk about how everything's going and it's going great, but I mean, we still have our issues and that we're working with. And one of the first ones we're dealing with every day is the deprovisioning of users. I mean, not everybody tells IT when someone leaves anywhere on campus. And so we age everybody out after 210 days. And so for some people, they'll just have a phone number and then they'll just kind of disappear. So that's kind of what we're working with, even internally, just in IT, just working on our internal processes, doing the normal phone number disconnects, change of service, stuff like that. And then, like Tom said, with phone numbers, right now we have our identity management solution that we pull phone numbers from our HR system, which are associated to people's job titles and job numbers.
Yes.
So you'll have a new person that'll be hired on, and they'll just inherit the phone number of the person that was there before, whether that is not even remotely true. And so right now we're working through a project to try to sever that tie or make a better two-way sync between our different systems and give them accurate phone numbers so they can have more accurate information for what they need. Since we are a research institution, we have Linux users. Right now there is a lovely third-party solution that kind of works, kind of doesn't, and yeah, we're working on that one. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the Mac client, there's a preview of the Mac client out now that's very limited, but I mean, they've been promising us a new Mac client for probably a year and a half now. So if it comes to fruition and what they believe it will be, I will be amazed, but I am cautiously optimistic. And then shared numbers between staff. So what do you do with person that answers the phone, the main line, that also needs someone down the hall to the left to also answer it? So just developing all these internal processes with Exchange, with Active Directory, just getting a nice Visio diagram and saying, okay, you want to do this, go here. If you want to do this, go here. And I know I was working on documentation the other day, and we're still trying to give it to a level where I have the same information that I can give to our workstation guys who can speak to it with the level of knowledge that they need to display to their users so they understand. Because, I mean, for some people, this is just throwing the rule book out and just recreating everything that they do. And then with student workers, luckily we had a decision very early on in that discussion that if you have an identity that is a student, we will have no voice pieces that touch your account whatsoever. You have a separate identity that is isolated from your work. So you have your work identity and your student identity, which was awesome for us, because then obviously you get into the students coming and going, and students being able to go in at night and answer phone calls when they're partying and stuff like that. So it was luckily a decision made for us so we didn't have to deal with that or have any issues. And then just legacy T1s, we're still behind our Avaya. We do legacy T1s to SIP, to our Skype environment, and then later this year we are going to SIP trunking. So right now we have some issues where people will call out and the caller ID will get scrambled, and so it'll show up as unknown caller and people think it's a spammer and just hang up.
We do have some more information out there. We have tried to create as much information for our general public as possible, for faculty, students, everybody. So I've got 3 websites up here as well for a basic overview. I'm putting a shout out there for the online training, because we have developed some online training so faculty and staff can go out there and they don't necessarily have to ask the questions or come to a training. They can go online and see how some of these things work, but just getting some basic information about Skype for Business. So I see people taking pictures. I'll give you a moment on this, but that was this is the last slide on here. If anybody needs some more information outside of this, contact information is here. I know I brought some cards as well. I think Drew's got some cards. So if you need our contact information, you can come up here and we'll hand out a card. But if there's any questions, like I said, I've had conversations with several of the universities and colleges here in Kansas, and quite possibly some of you in the room here. But if you want to know any more information, you want to get more in depth onto the technical side, how we've set things up, more on the migration side, we'd be happy to set up a Skype online meeting and talk to you guys about it and share our lessons that we've had with this. So okay, we've got about five minutes.
Yeah, we do have time for questions, so
And
let
we
me
have
get the
devices
mics.
up here as well if anybody wants to come look at devices and if anyone wants to see the Skype client too.
Two quick questions. One is, you've been at this for about 3 years now, it looks like.
Yeah.
As a whole, has this project saved money in total to this point?
It's a good question. That's kind of hard to answer as well. One of the things that we did initially when we were essentially selling this to the university, to the executive levels, we put up cost comparisons between them. And the money saving comes in when you start looking at the replacement costs of the complete system. So the millions of dollars that we would have to put into maintaining the current Avaya system, the current legacy devices, compared to the relatively inexpensive choice of going with a software client that runs over networking. So one of the areas that we really looked at for if there was cost savings was going to be in the staffing and the support pieces of it. So every time that someone's phone breaks, we have to send a technician out, get in a truck, send an entire truck out to repair that phone line or install a new phone line or do the wiring closet work on that, and then they've got to come back. And so that takes the staff time is where a lot of that money gets saved, because with this, it's built into the desktop. We don't have to, essentially, if we don't have a phone on a desk, we just have a headset, there's not as many components in that. So really, we're seeing a lot of the cost savings coming in from the networking staff time on this. With licensing as well, there is the cost of the Avaya licensing for the PBX and all the phone lines that go into that. It's somewhat offset by the licensing that you have to pay for the Skype for Business, although the Skype for Business is a little bit cheaper, especially when we're considering our campus agreement that we've got with Microsoft and all these other components. It is significantly cheaper on that. So, and then with the devices themselves, if we are going, the Avaya phone that's on the desk, $200 depending on the model and things like that. And if we are replacing that with something that's a headset instead, there is that savings on that one-time cost as well.
Do you have an amount that you advertise as this is how much we've saved in the last 3 years versus if we did nothing?
No, we don't have it advertised, but it's also very hard to calculate. And that's something that we do need to work on, is the metrics of, we've got the data of how it's being used, but when it comes to cost savings, that one's very hard to quantify. So.
My last question is, you still have the Avaya system, correct?
Yes.
Yep. Login for call centers and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's still costing money to maintain. Is there a date you have when you're just going to decommission that completely?
We don't have a date set for decommissioning. However, the plan is that as we roll people off of the Avaya, we're going to significantly shrink the Avaya. So right now it's rated for, I don't know how many tens of thousands of lines that we've got. But as we're pulling the people off and migrating to this, we can start shrinking that size of the Avaya. We can start shrinking the size of the licensing. The call centers, we're starting up a project to look at how are we going to replicate call centers, because there are third-party solutions out there that we can add on to Skype, and other universities have done this. We need to start looking at call centers. But we know that there will always have to be an Avaya there, at least for the foreseeable future. We can't just simply say, we're done, because we know the building controls that have to run over the copper lines, the security phones have to run over copper lines, things like that.
Can you get analog like audio codes, devices that will convert stuff to analog that you can?
Yeah, audio codes, are we still using the audio codes? No, I was going to say, we had an audio code.
No, we have that. The SIP solution we're going with, we'll have options for both.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one brand, I'm sure there's others.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for these two? Let me get the mic there. We are still live streaming, so we can get your question.
Do you have a lot of, you said you rolled this out to all your students, do you have a lot of student usage of Skype?
We are seeing a lot of student usage. With the monitoring server that comes with Skype, it's very hard to distinguish who's faculty, who's staff. But anecdotally, I can say it's being used. We can look and see who's using it from an individual level. I know that student employees, of course, are using it. The exact extent of students, I don't know if we can
I mean, right now, I mean, I can check who's logged in, and on an average day, we maybe have 5,000 people logged in. But I mean, there's a good 1,000 of those that are logged in with OA, and it's student checking email that doesn't see the little green presence or doesn't even know it exists. I mean, we have students that don't know what Skype is, and yeah.
So do you have any plans to advertise that as a way to maybe communicate with your professor, or kind of that kind of communication?
Yeah, we have been, and that's been the push all along, is that for no other reason, this is adding those services to campus. And so some of the things that we're doing, of course we're pushing faculty and staff towards this, but we're also saying, students, this is a way that you can meet up with your other students. We've pushed this out to faculty. This is a way that you could communicate one-on-one, although we do have other solutions for that as well, because we have something integrated with Blackboard and things like that that can do some of those things. But we have said this is a collaboration tool. This is a way for you to communicate. This is a way that, and when we started integrating it with Skype, the commercial version of Skype, this is a way that if you've got an existing Skype account, you can still communicate with all these other students, but this is something that you can use. One of the things that we've been pushing on a lot of the faculty that at least that I've done presentations for is, with Federation, this is a way for you as possibly a researcher to be communicating and federating with other companies and other corporations that you might be doing research with, or with other universities that you might be doing research with. So one of the things, one of the examples that we've used in the past is aerospace engineering. They work very closely with Boeing down in Wichita. Boeing has Skype for Business. They're openly federated. You could have researchers and students who are working on projects working with researchers or people at Boeing and integrating just like you're in the same environment on the same desktop, screen sharing. Job interviews can be scheduled, and that's for students as well. You can use Skype for Business when you are interviewing for jobs or interviewing for other things in the university. But that's another thing for the faculty and staff is when you're doing job interviews, if you don't want to fly somebody in, or if you don't want to have them fly in on their own dime, you can set up these Skype for Business online meetings and do web conferencing with them. So yeah, we're trying to hit faculty, we're trying to have use cases for faculty, use cases for staff, and use cases for students as well. Yeah.
We have one last question here, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So,
have you received any pushback from your faculty or staff to the fact that they are potentially readily available to their students 24 hours a day?
That's come up. Like I said, think of every question. We've had that on a couple different levels. We've had, we consider the scenario right away of what do we do with the high profile people? Do we actually, the chancellor, the head basketball coach, the football coach, what do we do with those people? And there are ways, I mean, if you simply don't log into the system, you're not available, people can't see you. There are privacy settings on the client as well. So you can set privacy settings and basically block everybody except for maybe one or two people. So people can't even send instant messages in. They can't get them on voice.
But it's the previous question, if they don't even know it exists, if they're logged in to check email and they're present available to the world.
Right.
Yeah. Our running joke is if people are concerned about it, I was like, you can call our CIO, and more than likely he will actually answer and start video. And he will, and he has, and most of our workstation guys can attest to that. He likes to.
Yeah, our CIO does like that. When he calls you, a lot of times his picture will pop up, and there's been times where he's like, is your video not working? Click, yes, it is now. So.
well, let's give them both a big hand of applause.
Thank you.
If you have more questions, I'm sure outside of the session here, they'd be welcome to ask them outside of this.
Certainly.
But we're getting ready for lunch, so we're going to break at this point. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks.